The distress beacon had been transmitting for 11 hours. 11 hours of silence. 11 hours of drifting through the cold black between star systems, with 3 hull breaches sealed by nothing more than emergency foam and desperate prayer. Aboard the Vethery refugee vessel Endless Mercy, 412 souls waited to die. Admiral Zyrex stood at the center of his shattered bridge, his 4 eyes scanning the dead screens around him. He was not a being accustomed to helplessness. He had commanded fleets. He had negotiated treaties. He had once stared down a karate siege fleet with nothing but bluster and a broken shield generator, and won. But this was different. The Vethery were not warriors. They were scholars, farmers, family units fleeing the syndicate purge that had turned their home world to ash in less than 72 hours. Zyrex had been escort, a single cruiser assigned to shepherd them to the neutral colony at Sector 14. Then the ambush. Then the explosion. Then the silence. His cruiser was dead. His crew was gone. He was the only trained soldier left on a civilian ship full of children and elders, bleeding from a gash above his secondary eye, listening to the soft weeping of beings who had already lost everything, and were now losing the last thing they had left. Hope. Admiral. A young Vethery named Jo approached him carefully, her pale blue hands clutching a data tablet. She was barely past adolescence, one of the ship's volunteer technicians. The beacon. I've been monitoring the frequencies. Something changed. Zyrex turned. What kind of change? A response. Her 4 fingers trembled as she held the tablet out. On the emergency channel. But Admiral, the signal signature. It's. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Zyrex looked at the waveform on the screen. Human. On the bridge of the UES Ironclad Covenant, Commander Darian Voss was already moving. Navigation, give me an intercept course. Best possible speed. Commander, we're technically outside our patrol boundary. I didn't ask for a legal opinion, Lieutenant. Course. Now. The Ironclad Covenant was a Humanity United warship, a Meridian-class heavy cruiser, 600 meters of reinforced titanium, railgun batteries, and sheer human stubbornness. She had seen 3 wars, 2 decommission attempts, and 1 very undignified bar fight at Starport Helix that Voss preferred not to discuss. Voss herself was 43 years old, lean as a blade, with close-cropped silver hair and the kind of eyes that made junior officers feel like their entire career history was being read and silently judged. She had a reputation in 3 separate star systems for responding to distress calls before she even finished reading them. This one had come in on the Galactic Emergency Band, the universal frequency that every spacefaring species had agreed to honor during the Interstellar Compact of 2287. It was meant for exactly this kind of situation. And Commander Darian Voss did not ignore the compact. She had helped write it. Signal the Endless Mercy, she said, dropping into her command chair with the ease of someone who had spent more of her life in it than out of it. Tell them we are en route. ETA 42 minutes. Tell them to seal whatever they can seal and conserve oxygen. Tell them, she paused for just a moment, tell them help is coming. Say it exactly like that. Her comms officer, me, a young woman from the Mars colonies with quick hands and quicker instincts, was already transmitting before the order finished. Done, Commander. Response? We'll get one. Keep the channel open. The message arrived on the Endless Mercy like a sunrise after a year of night. Help is coming. 3 words. That was all. But Zyrex read them 4 times, and each time his throat tightened in a way he was not accustomed to. He was a military being. He did not cry. He had not cried in 40 years of service. His secondary eyes were simply reacting to the recycled air. Who are they? Someone asked. A father, clutching a child against his chest. Are they Vethery? Are they from the compact fleet? No, Zyrex said quietly. Then, louder, they are human. Silence. It was the particular kind of silence that came with that word. Humans were complicated in galactic politics. Young species, barely 200 years in space. Impulsive. Emotional. Frequently baffling in their decision-making. They formed attachments to enemies, adopted rivals, cried at funerals for beings they had only known a week. They negotiated with one hand and built warships with the other, and somehow expected both to coexist, and the maddening thing was, they mostly did. 11 hours ago, Zyrex might have felt a flicker of doubt. Right now, he felt nothing but relief. Is there a technician named New York? He called out. A thin young male, barely 18 by Vethery reckoning, raised his hand from a corner where he had been quietly trying to patch a secondary ventilation system with material strips and determination. Here, sir. Help Joe stabilize that beacon signal. I want them to track us without any interference. And get me the oxygen cycling rates on every section of this ship. Yes, sir. New York moved with sudden purpose, the way frightened young people did when someone gave them something to do. Zyrex turned back to the screen. He watched the signal. He waited. The ironclad Covenant dropped out of FTL 40 minutes and 17 seconds after receiving the distress call. Voss was already on her feet. Visual? The main screen resolved from static to the image of the Endless Mercy, and Voss felt her jaw tighten. The civilian vessel was listing 9 degrees to port. Debris field around her told the story of the ambush better than any report could. 3 hull ruptures, visible even from this distance. 1 engine completely gone. The other barely lit, flickering like a candle in wind. How many aboard? She asked quietly. 412 life signs, her sensor operator reported. Duh is confirming the count now. Duh, the ship's lead sensor analyst, was hunched over her console with the focused intensity of someone who understood that these numbers were people. 412. Voss repeated it deliberately. Not to herself. To her crew. To make sure every person on that bridge understood what this mission was. Prep every shuttle we've got. Medical teams on standby. Engineering, I want breach specialists in EVA suits ready to go the moment we're in range. We are not losing a single one. Commander, her tactical officer spoke up carefully, the Syndicate ambush formation suggests they may still be in the area. I know. If they return while we're mid-rescue. I know. Her voice was calm. Final. Then they'll find us here. And they will have made a very poor decision. She turned to face her tactical display. Battle stations. Keep shields at full. We rescue, and we defend. Simultaneously. Anyone who thinks a human warship can't do both at once has not been paying attention. Her crew moved. No hesitation. No argument. That was the thing about humans that most species didn't understand, Zyrex would reflect later. It wasn't that they were fearless. Commander Voss almost certainly felt fear. She was, after all, positioning her single warship as a shield between 400 civilians and a Syndicate kill fleet. That required either madness or fear with decision. Humans chose fear with decision. Every time. Without being asked. The rescue took 6 hours and 14 minutes. Joe in New York worked alongside human engineers to stabilize 2 of the 3 hull breaches well enough for safe evacuation. A young human medic named High operated for 4 straight hours in the Endless Mercy's makeshift medical bay, saving 3 critically injured Vethery who would otherwise not have survived transport. The ironclad Covenant's chief engineer, somehow managed to get the civilian vessel's secondary engine online long enough to maintain position, a feat her own technical team called impossible and she called Tuesday. The Syndicate did not return. Perhaps they detected the ironclad Covenant's weapon signatures and calculated the odds. Perhaps they made the correct decision for once. When the last Vethari refugee was safely aboard the ironclad Covenant, Admiral Zyrex found Commander Voss on the observation deck. She was standing with her arms crossed, watching the stars, looking like someone who had just finished a shift and was already thinking about the next one. "Commander Voss," he said. She turned. Up close, she looked tired. Not broken, humans didn't seem to break the way other species did, but tired in the honest way of someone who had spent everything they had and knew it was worth it. "Admiral Zyrex." She nodded. 412. All accounted for. He was quiet for a moment. "Why did you come?" "You were outside your patrol boundary. There was no tactical advantage. There was significant risk. And we are not even your species." Darien Voss looked at him with those steady, reading eyes. "You sent a distress call," she said simply. "On the emergency channel." "Yes." "Then we answered." She shrugged, a very human gesture, casual and absolute at once. "That's what the channel is for." Zyrex looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he inclined his head in the deepest bow his species reserved for those who had earned permanent honor. Voss just clapped him once on the shoulder. "Come on, Admiral. Let's get your people fed."